On Wednesday, we begin the season of Lent. It's called the Porch of Lent. It's the introduction to the season. And so the scripture readings this weekend are a great time for us to examine really what that season is about, because it's not about intentions, it's about walking the walk. Now, tonight we have a funeral here. It's the 14th one since Christmas in our parishes. But one of the things that I'm always amazed at when we sit down with the family and they're writing the obituary is the family always comes up with, they seem to learn new things, maybe get new insights or have an appreciation about that person that they never had when they were alive. And it's not about that person's thoughts. It always comes through with how that person lived their life. So when you go to the cemetery, you don't see a tombstone that said, well, he really meant to be nice. How do we know that? We know it by the way they lived their life. I'm convinced that God's from Missouri. It's the show me state. It's the proof is in the pudding. And that's really what the Lenten season calls us to take a look at in our lives. I think that sometimes people laugh at us as Catholics about Lent, and sometimes they have good reason to, because it's really kind of a ridiculous thing. Sometimes people think, well, I'm going to go on a fast, so I'll fit into my Easter outfit. You know, that's not what the season of Lent's about. The season of Lent is the time for us to get honest about our relationship with God and what does it really look like in the way that I lead my life every day. Okay, so it's not just pious thoughts, it's how does that translate into the way I live my life. Our theme for Lent this year is going to be beyond. Beyond. Because God's always calling us to a little deeper level, to a new relationship. Now, you candidates for confirmation, you were once the size of that little Josephine Grace. Hard to believe, isn't it, with feet that size, okay? You were little once, and your parents presented you for baptism to start you on this journey. Then you made first reconciliation, first Eucharist, and now you come to what's going to be the completion of your sacraments of commitment. And the idea of this is that little by little we grow in that. Little by little we grow in that. And that's, God always takes us where we're at. But God always lovingly invites us a little bit further on down the road. So God always accepts us no matter where we're at. But He says, I got news for you. I want you to go beyond where you're at. So what might that look like? Well, sometimes it's beyond our prejudices, our anger, our inability to forgive, our not letting go of things that happened in the past. He's calling us beyond that. He doesn't want us living in the past. Sometimes it's calling us beyond our prejudices, our preconceived ideas, our living small by saying, well, I'm not very good at this, and somebody else is really good, so I'm not going to do it because somebody else can do it better than me. He's calling us out of our comfort zone. He's calling us out of that safety to grow in our faith. But you know what? It takes one important thing to do that. You have to decide. It's your choice. So Jesus will never force us to do anything. He could, but He doesn't. And so really, every year, Lent, we should do this all the time in our spiritual lives, but Lent is a great time for us to kind of expand that. But Lent is a good time for us to take a look at our choices. We live in a day and age where we want to blame everybody else for what's going on. We hear it in our world leaders, we hear it in all over the place. Well, I hadn't done this, if she hadn't done this, if they hadn't done this to me, if my kids weren't like this, if my wife hadn't done this. We have all kinds of excuses. And when it comes to the spiritual life, there are no excuses. People say, well, Father, you know, I'd pray more, I'd go to church more, but we're really busy. Well, who's in charge of your calendar? I sometimes think people think that there's this window in the kitchen that this invisible arm comes in and writes on your calendar on the refrigerator and fills it in for you. That doesn't happen. You make your own schedule. You do your own things. And so it's time just really to be honest about that. My Lutheran grandma used to say, Johnny, we vote with our feet. The stuff that's ultimately most important, you do. If it's not important, you don't do it. There's no excuse. Some of you may have in your home, my Lutheran grandparents did, above their bed in the bedroom, they had a picture of Jesus standing at the door knocking. Maybe you've seen that before. It's a really old picture. And if you've got the real McCoy of that picture, there's no handle on the outside of the door. You know what that means, don't you? You got to open it from the inside. And so all during your life, yours especially, Jesus is knocking. He does it every day, but during Lent the knock's a little louder. And he says, are you going to let me in? I know you're in there. Are you going to let me heal you? Are you going to let me transform you? Are you going to let me free you from the stuff that you've been holding on to and you can't let go of yourself, but I can help you do it? He's knocking. What are you going to do?